Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two. I'm Will, and with me as always is Little Ma'am.
Sarah.
And today we're doing a two-player perspective and accessibility for Big Sur. Sarah? If you're curious about our opinion, check out our other video, Rolling with Reviews, Big Sur. Said it again.
Yes.
Sarah, tells us a bit about this game.
In Big Sur, players draft cards to use either as resources to build new road sections or as the road sections themselves. Your linear path of cards will score for connecting terrain types and meeting other conditions. For more scoring opportunities, you can also add landmarks to your highway, which are based on actual locations on California's Big Sur highway. Okay, Will, so how does the game change for two players?
Well, there is no bot.
Nope.
Nana Man is simply a tourist here, taking selfies, making sure that he's having a great time. As for setting up the game, at the bottom of the cards, there will be player numbers, and you'll only use the ones that have the two-player number. So if it has 3 and 4 players, that's removed. If it just has 4 players, that's removed.
Right. If it doesn't show a 2 on it,
yes,
then yeah.
You only play with the ones that have a 2 on it. And once that's set up, you're ready to go. You
shuffle and you're good to go.
Yeah, and deal out however many.
Yep. Okay, so the issues, and this happens in a lot of games with two players, is the landmark row specifically can get kind of stagnant, especially since you don't get that many of them per game, but especially if they get clumped so that they're like several of them are trees and no one's really doing trees. These are your extra scoring opportunities, so it can get a little frustrating.
Yeah, or if you are doing trees, it still can get stagnate if there, say, are a lot of trees, because you can only claim one landmark per stretch. And if you're making a continuous stretch, well, that's not a second stretch.
Yeah.
So you can't claim a second landmark for it.
Right.
And therefore, that's another way it can also get a little stuck.
Exactly. So I don't think there's really any solution to it. It's just make sure it's really well shuffled.
Yeah, ahead of time.
So that's pretty much the only issue we saw at a two-player count. So what it does well is, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It is a very fast-moving game because each player is drafting 2 cards from the road row
Yeah.
every turn. And so your deck, because it is specified for the number of players, that's your timer of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, the turn is simple. Grab 2 cards, you choose to build whatever you can afford, or not.
Or not.
Choose if you qualify for a landmark or not.
Yep.
And you're done.
And you refill the row.
Refill the row and then moves next player.
Yep. And so also because you only have one other opponent, it's much easier to react and shift your strategy. Sometimes. I couldn't say that I was always very good at shifting. But you can potentially, because you only have one person to keep track of, be a bit more competitive rather than really just trying to get lucky if you're playing a 4-player game kind of thing.
Maybe your landmarks might not be as powerful. Like, for example, a landmark that lets you use someone else's whatever. Well, in a 4-player game, you have a lot more choices.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of depth in this game, and sometimes narrowing it down so, okay, I only have to worry about hers. So is sometimes better for the brain.
Especially because this game is cognitively heavy, which we'll talk about in the accessibility. Sometimes having only one opponent is a good thing.
Yeah.
So that, especially in the learning experience of it, I think 2-player would probably be the best way to learn this game, so you don't feel so overwhelmed with all the options or how fast, because that's one of the other good things at the 2-player count is that row of cards that you can use to build your road. It doesn't move very fast in a 2-player game, so you can plan better.
Yeah, that's the row you don't want moving fast. The landmark one, you might want it refreshing every now and then.
Right. Again, not really sure how to fix that. All right, that's everything for the 2-player experience. So for accessibility, like we kind of alluded to, this is, for a small box game, a cognitively heavy game because of the multi-use cards.
Yes, because the cards can be discarded for their resource. They can be built, and when they're built, they'll have different abilities. Like the lower point value ones will give you like a resource you can use to build. And then as you go up, 2 value ones will give you additional scoring options. And then the 3 value ones will always have 2 sceneries to put in 2 different stretches. But then
they
the
all
4
have 2 sceneries.
No, well, the 4 has 2 sceneries, but it's the same scenery.
Right.
It's always like 2 mountains or 2 forests, or so it's easier to score, but it's only going to score for 1 stretch.
Right.
So it won't score as many times as say a 3-player can, or 3-point can.
So there's a lot to keep track of, and so it can just be a bit overwhelming. And I know a lot of people come to a small box game, especially because this has a more accessible theme.
Yeah.
I think this one's going to surprise people, not necessarily in a good way if they're not looking for a heavier, thinkier, crunchier game.
Yeah, what's is it Takanoko? No, wait, is that the panda one?
The panda one.
No, what's the one that where you're going in Japan and the last person goes first? I think it's currently with Stonemaier Games.
Oh, yeah, I think isn't that Takanoko?
That might be Takanoko.
Because
that's like a scenic one, but it's lightweight.
Yes.
And that's for pretty
But it's
much
also
anybody.
a bigger game.
Yeah, it's a bigger game. This one's a smaller game that you'd think, it's another scenic game that's lightweight. No, it's got a lot of depth in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so kind of going on the fact that there's a lot of different resources. You can use cards, and it shows on the back of the card what the resource is, but it also shows an icon on the front of the card. So keeping track of what resources you have can be a little tricky when you can use the top of your discard pile. You can once per turn. You can use each icon in your road once per turn. You might have a landmark that allows you to use another player's, and you have all these cards in your hand. I mean, early on in the game when you're only going to be able to build 1 road, it's fine. But when you start being able to build 2 or more cards, planning it out and making sure you're not using something twice can be a little tricky. And there's nothing in the game to help you keep track. And we thought of, well, you could use tokens, but then that's just one more thing you have to keep track of.
Yeah. Although I did find it funny, they came with a couple of Ziplocs.
Yeah, I don't know why the game in the game box came with a couple extra Ziplocs that don't fit the cards. No idea what they were for.
Yeah. And then the first player sign marker was in his own Ziploc. It's like, what are these Ziplocs for?
Yeah.
These are for the tokens that you might get yourself and choose to put in the game later.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could think of, but this again would still be a little messy, is when you use a card, you could flip it over or maybe slide it up and down. Mm-hmm. You could play around with that. But speaking of the row of your road, you're going to end up with a lot of cards left and right horizontally in front of you. So sitting next to another player at a small table might be very challenging. Someone's going to have to literally take the high road, and someone's going to need to take the low road. And even then, you're going to have to make room for the landmarks as well.
Yeah, it definitely makes me worried about when you get the higher player counts.
Right.
Can you actually fit this on a normal table?
Yeah.
Without seriously stacking up your cards some way?
Yeah. So then when you come to the cards, some of the text is a little small. So I was constantly picking up the landmark cards and even the road cards that have the scoring opportunity because they're just, you can't read it from a distance. And then the numbers that identify the player count, they did do a stroke line, so it's not like they're impossible to read, but some of them still have very poor contrast with the background art because they didn't do like even a small little box around the numbers to really
separate it out from the art.
To really let it separate out. So it's not the worst I've ever seen, and it is still visible. You just might have to squint at it or be in very good light. Mm-hmm. I think that covers everything that we had a challenge with. So what it does right,
what about the text? Because you said like the numbers for separating out the cards and the text on them.
Yeah, I just said that.
Oh, okay.
I just said that.
I blanked out.
He blanked out. All right.
Because I thought you were talking about the contrast.
Yes.
But the size of the font.
The size of the font as well. I did kind of mention that before, that the size of all the font on the cards is kind of small.
I think the font is only on the landmarks and the 2-mile cards.
True.
Every other card is not on.
Yeah, because it's just icons, and you usually don't ever, if you need, I don't think there's actually anything that ever needs 2 of the same icon to build.
No.
So, yeah, they don't really use numbers next to the resources you need to use. Okay, so what it does right, this is a cosmetic thing, but it's still really nice to see. The landmarks show different people taking selfies of themselves at these different things. And they did a really good job at having a variety of representation. It's not all, white people. So it was good to see that. And again, it's probably not the biggest thing to a lot of people, but they had to make that choice because all this art is original art, and I happen to like it, but we'll talk about that in the review. So it was just nice to see that representation of different people going on vacation on this scenic route and enjoying themselves. So that was really nice. Though the game says you should play close-handed if you need help, like with Will and his vision, playing it open hand doesn't affect anything.
No, there was no card that we found that, well, you can steal something. No.
There's no direct player interaction. There's indirect, because it's a drafting game. You can see that, like, if I can see Will's trying to make a mountain road, I might go for the card that has a mountain and a flower because I need the flower, but it will deny him the mountain. That's probably the best you could do, but again, it's indirect.
Yeah.
So when someone's taking their turn, there's nothing that any other player at the table can do while they're taking their turn. So if someone is having trouble or, again, needs visual help, they can play open-handed.
Yeah.
And also, the icons are really good and distinct and have good contrast.
Because there's
five
scenic
terrains.
and 5 resources?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it works really well, and I think they did a really good job with those. And the rules are comprehensive. It was, as much as there's complexity in the game, it comes through the gameplay, not knowing how to play.
Right. I never needed to go back to the rules and go, how did this work?
Right.
Like, no, I got it.
Right. It's all very straightforward. So that's everything. Conclusion.
For 2 players, would you recommend?
I think so. I think this is probably going to be good at most player counts, but it will be a slightly different feel. I would definitely recommend learning at a 2-player count.
Yeah. Also, even after you've learned it, you might lean to 2 players if you want to be a little bit more competitive.
Yes.
Because you can react better at a 2-player game.
Right.
Accessibility.
I think so. Even though you've got some minor issues, I really do think they're minor. So I think this is going to be accessible, except if it's just too heavy.
Right.
Cognitively, if you don't like or not looking for a more heavy cognitive experience in a small box, there were points I had analysis paralysis because I had too many options and I didn't like any of them.
Well, the game, the first game we played, Sarah's like, oh, you just won. You just won. Why? Just you won.
Why am I still playing?
Fine, I will take a turn, and she just goes on and on about this, and then we counted up the scores, and she won.
I did not expect
solidly too, like by 7 points.
It was that last turn. I tell you, I built 3 cards in that last turn. Up to that point, I don't think I was winning.
But it was that point where her brain just snapped and
it's like, oh, this is how this works.
Yeah.
So, again, this is going to be very accessible. Again, just if you're not looking for that heavier experience. And it's not like it's a heavy game. But when you're thinking about small box games, most people are inclined towards a lighter experience.
Yes.
So that's it. Okay.
All right. And Sarah,
yes,
as funny as it sounds and the way this game is themed, I would not recommend this as a road trip game.
Oh, God, no. I mean, you couldn't play this in a car. I mean...
You need a really big table.
Now... Maybe by train, but I don't know if there's a train that goes. See, as much as we live in California, we're in Northern California, and we've never been driving. Will wouldn't get much out of it.
I think the Zephyr goes down that way.
Because the only thing I could think of is if you were on the train and you were in the dining car, those tables, but you still might have to break the road up and have like a switchback.
Yeah, I think those tables are still not big enough for this.
Yeah.
In fact, this 6-foot table
is
was not big enough.
Not for a sitting side by side.
Yeah.
So, yes, not a road trip.
Yeah, a road trip game that's not for road trips.
Right, it's so that you can experience the road trip without ever leaving your house.
There you
go. Like us.
And why would you ever roll with just one when you can be
rolling with 2?
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with Two, that's TWO. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Discord, we have a channel on Tabletop Express. Check the show notes for the invite link.
If you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.